I think one of the first questions that people tend to ask though is, why do we want to study the tabernacle in the Old Testament? Aren't we New Testament people? But most of what is in the Old Testament are either types or copies of what is to come in the New Testament or is already in heaven. So everything in the Old Testament points to Jesus. No matter what you look at, you can find a way to point it to Jesus because it's all about Him. It's about the Father, the Son, the Holy Spirit. That's a theme that never changes throughout the entire Scriptures. It's all about God's plan of redemption for His people, how He brings us back. Now, many people look at God in the Old Testament. I've heard this said, and they see a wrathful, vengeful, vengeance type of God, waiting to condemn anyone who breaks His rules. And that's not fair. Yeah. I don't know about that. But if you take time and look deeply at the God of the Old Testament, you find out that He's actually very merciful, grace-filled, loving. He's slow to anger. And the things He does, what we see in the Old Testament is a spiritual battle being played out on an earthly level. Is what's going on. When you see these people die, it's the end results of sin. It's the end results of where sin will take us. It's what goes on in the heavenlies. And so we learn really a lot by it. Satan's plan is to destroy God's creation. Every part of it, especially man. He wants to destroy man. And but God is protecting His creation in the Old Testament. The times, He tells to wipe out a group of peoples because that people is so polluted by this point that either illness, disease, this is going to kill everybody around them. So He's actually protecting His people, keeping them from being destroyed by Satan's plan. But He does it always without violating the free will He gave us. Allows us to make choices always, or to choose. That's why there's so many ugly things in the Old Testament, is man tends to make bad choices all the time. So, now the tabernacle, what is a tabernacle? Somebody tell me what a tabernacle is. It's a great word. Do you have any idea what it means?
Where they worship God.
What it is for, but what is it?
A dwelling place?
A tent.
It's a tent. If we translated this all the way, really the English would be called the tent. It is known as the tent of meetings, the house of God. It has those other titles as well. We stick with tabernacle because it sounds more spiritual. I don't know. But the tent is the tabernacle. When God said to set it up, He gave very strict instructions on how it was to be set up. And it's because it is a type, it is a picture, a copy of something that is in heaven. We're going to see this tabernacle, the real one day. Now, I can't tell you how it's going to be. I don't know. We'll figure it out when we get there. And each piece of furniture in this tabernacle has an important significance in the redemption plan of God. So that's why we look at it. We do it. Now let's begin. I want to take a look at a few verses in Hebrews to start with, to kind of lay the groundwork why I can say with surety that this is a copy of something in heaven. You turn to Hebrews chapter 8, starting in verse 3. It says, "For every high priest is appointed to offer both gifts and sacrifices. Therefore it is necessary that this one also have something to offer. For if he were on earth, he would not be a priest." Now, this is talking about Jesus. "Since there are priests who offer the gifts according to the law, who serve the copy and shadow of the heavenly things, as Moses was divinely instructed when he was about to make the tabernacle. For he said, 'See that you make all things according to the pattern shown you on the mountain.'" "But now he has obtained a more excellent ministry, inasmuch as he is also mediator of a better covenant, which was established on better promises." So the tabernacle is a pattern of a heavenly tabernacle. Now, why God lives in a tent up in heaven, I don't know. But Jesus here is functioning as the high priest, and He will be the one functioning as high priest in that tabernacle. And so that's what we're going to look at throughout this course. We're going to also take a little look at the role of the priest and the high priest, because you can't separate them from the tabernacle. They all come together, work together. Now the pattern Hebrews was talking about was given to Moses. So we're going to have to go all the way back to Exodus now. I'll chase you around your Bible tonight. We're going to take a look at where it all begins. Exodus chapter 25. Says, starting in verse 1, Then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, that they bring me an offering. From everyone who gives it willingly with his heart, you shall take my offering. And this is the offering which you shall take from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet thread, fine linen, and goat's hair, ram skins dyed red, badger skins, and acacia wood, oil for the light, and spices for the anointing oil and for the sweet incense, onyx stones, and stones to be set in the ephod and in the breastplate. And they shall make an ark. Well, did I skip something?
Chapter 8,
verse 8. And let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell among them, according to all that I show you, that is the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furnishings. I missed something. No, that's it.
Yeah.
And just so you shall make it. So we're going to begin with, we're going to take a look here. Now, again, as typical with Scripture, and those who just did the effective Bible study class with me, things aren't always just stuck in a straight order that you can just go along and A, B, C, D, E. And that's what happens here. The instructions come, some of the furniture, then he goes to the tent part, then he goes back to other furniture, and then he goes to the priest's clothing and jumps all around. I'm going to kind of condense it back into, we're going to look at the furniture tonight and go through all the furniture and take a look at what it all is. And tonight we're not going to deal with where it goes in the tabernacle, just each piece of furniture. Hopefully next week when we put the tent together and place it in the front, because where it goes is very important in symbolizing what the redemptive plan is all about. So, going to Exodus 25, verse 10. It says, And they shall make an ark of acacia wood. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, 1.5 cubits its width, and 1.5 cubits its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold, inside and out you shall overlay it, and shall make it on it a molding of gold all around. You shall cast 4 rings of gold for it, and put them in its 4 corners. 2 rings shall be on one side, and 2 rings on the other side. And you shall make poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with gold. You shall put poles into the rings on the side of the ark, that the ark may be carried by them. The poles shall be in the rings of the ark, and they shall not be taken from it. And you shall put into the ark the testimony which I will give you. Okay, the first thing God tells them to make is a box. An ark is a box. It's not that complex. It's not the ark that floats in the water that Noah made. I don't know why we call them both arks. Anybody?
They're containers.
They're containers, I guess. So, anyway, he tells them to make a box. Now, anybody know how big this box is?
2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width.
Right.
And 1.5 cubits its height.
Okay.
That settles that.
That solves that problem. Everybody knows what a cubit is and how long it is. Well, Ron.
We'll make a tape of it.
Ron laughed.
Ron laughed because there's the size of the ark.
No.
Did you just make that? God said, I just wanted quick.
As you can tell, Ron did not do that. That's my level of artistry. His would have actually looked like something. We had this cardboard sitting around. I thought, you know what? How big is the ark? You know? And so I actually decided I'm going to actually put one together that's pretty close to the dimension. There's some disagreement over the size of the cubit. So, but basically, this is the size of the ark.
Which is,
Hmm?
what's the size of it?
It is in ours approximately 3 3/4 feet by 2 1/4 feet high and wide. So, it varies when you look at them. They've all got these different, if you look at the translations in it, some will have them being it's 4 feet by 2.5. So we did an approximation of what it is.
You didn't have time to cover it with gold.
Didn't have time to cover gold. Besides, what I thought we would do tonight is next week you all bring your gold with you and we will melt it down and we will go ahead and lay it. So, I thought that sounded like a deal to me and then, I'll just take it home afterwards. So, for a shrine in my house. You know.
You won't be able to touch it because it'll electrocute.
Yeah.
No, it's not the real one, so it will not have the testimony in it, so I couldn't come up with the Ten Commandments. Now it will have within it, now you had to have 4 rings on it, and you put the poles in it. If you notice it says the poles are never to leave it. Once they're put in, they're never to be taken out. Which raises a lot of interesting questions for me, because if you know the story, when David brought it back up, he had it on a cart coming back, with the pole still in it even. You know, did someone pull them out at some point? You know, we don't know. We don't know where the ark is. Someone's going to ask, do we know if the ark still exists? Nobody knows. There are all kinds of rumors, stories, conspiracy theories. We don't know. We do know. Mike probably knows, but where's the ark? The Ark of the Covenant. Where is it right now?
Where do I leave it?
Was I responsible for it?
They lost it again. So, now it's everywhere from Ethiopia to Saudi Arabia to under the Temple Mount to it could be anywhere. We don't know where it is.
And it's in a big warehouse.
It's in a warehouse in
Yeah.
DC, yeah, you know,
51.
according to that movie.
Yeah.
Now, acacia wood, if any of you know what acacia wood is?
Wood from the acacia
Go
tree.
for it. Go for it.
That is an acacia tree in the Negev in Israel. So it would be a tree something like that. Acacia trees are actually very varied. They're everything from a shrub to a tree. Some are thorny, some are not. There's just a lot of variation in the acacia. But some things that are interesting that I think is interesting that God is very specific on using acacia wood. Out of Egyptian mythology, it associates the acacia tree with the characteristics of the tree of life, such as the myth of Osiris and Isis, both of them. You know, it's supposed to be the tree of life is the acacia. And it's interesting he picks that to house the lion and to put the mercy seat on top. So it's done for many things. It makes for a lot of different cultures. They use it to make incense for rituals. That's mainly India, Nepal, China, Tibet. Smoke from the acacia bark is thought to keep demons and ghosts away and to put gods in a good mood. It's just interesting that this wood is so related to spiritual things in all these different cultures, and then God said, I want my furniture built out of it. So I don't know what's special about acacia wood from anything else. To me, it's just another piece of wood. According to Easton's Bible Dictionary, the acacia tree may have been the burning bush out in the desert that Moses saw. That's a stretch, but sounds good. And in Christian tradition, which you know my theory on traditions, I love to read them. They're interesting. Do not make law out of them, because a lot of them are right. But in Christian traditions, Christ's crown of thorns came from an acacia, a thorny acacia. So it could tie through. I can believe it because God's very interesting when he ties us right through things. He just does things like that. And so, now going on with the rest of this, in verse 17, and you shall make a mercy seat of pure gold. 2.5 cubits shall be its length, and 1.5 cubits its width. And you shall make 2 cherubim of gold. Of hammered work you shall make them at the 2 ends of the mercy seat. Make 1 cherub at one end, and the other cherub at the other end. You shall make the cherubim at the 2 ends of the one piece with the mercy seat. And the cherubim shall stretch out their wings above, covering the mercy seat with their wings. Um, Sorry, I'm kind of lost.
They shall face one another.
No, go ahead and read it. No. They shall face one another. The faces of the cherubim shall be toward the mercy seat. You shall put the mercy seat on top of the ark, and in the ark you shall put the testimony I will give you. And there I will meet with you, and I will speak with you from above the mercy seat, from between the two cherubim which are on the ark of the testimony, about everything which I will give you in commandment to the children of Israel. Okay, there are about as many designs for the cherubim on top of the ark as there are artists in the world. Everybody has their own perspective of what it looks like.
Is Ron going to get it?
Yeah, no, Ron's going to make one this week now. Ron had a choice. He could either do his paid job or do a free job for me, and so he chose to do his paying job, as always. Like he's got to make a living or something. There are all different versions of what this could have looked like. We have no idea what it actually looked like. Now, if you notice, this one's got the poles going this way through it. The other one has them all long ways. This one's got them going, and I never thought about it. It doesn't say which way to put the poles. So I thought, well, I guess it could have done it this way. I don't know what's the best balance point, but
That doesn't look like it would be balanced on
That
the
looks
line.
more
That was
balanced.
more like it.
That looks like that would be it right there.
There we go.
this is one of my favorites. I don't know why, but I just like this one.
It's shiny.
However, this would be a more accurate one, at least with Ezekiel's cherubim. So, one of the big issues we run into here, and we're going to talk about it in a second, is what is a cherubim? Well, I can tell you this: cherubim is the plural of cherub. Now, what's a cherub?
Thank you, Bill.
Heavenly creature.
Huh?
Heavenly creature.
A heavenly. What does it look like?
It's a chubby baby.
Right?
That's what I mean.
I don't think so.
Are these the same ones as in Ezekiel?
I don't know. Are they?
Is there seraphim?
No, they're cherubim too. Here's some of the interesting stuff about cherubim. They are, in the Old Testament, they are symbolic celestial beings. In the book of Genesis, we have a cherubim. What's he doing?
Guarding the gate.
During the gate.
There's a cherubim out of Ezekiel. But a cherubim was placed to guard the tree of life, so man couldn't get to it.
Right.
And so he had a flaming sword in his hand. I don't know if he looked like Arnold Schwarzenegger here, but you know. So,
I think twice, but
yeah, now would you take him on? I mean, come on.
Yeah, because if he looked like that little plump baby one, I don't think it would.
Well, I can pretty well guarantee the little baby one is not a cherub. You know, and yet here they are. Their role and function here is to cover the mercy seat. Think about that. That's no small role.
neither is guarding the tree of life.
Well, the best is just to keep man from getting to the tree of life because of sin. We couldn't live forever anymore. He won't be guarding it in heaven, so we get access to it again. But you know, you think about, you know, why are these cherubim? Why do you think these cherubim have been chosen by God to cover His mercy seat? This is where God will dwell, is between the cherubim on top of the ark. Any ideas? I don't want to be the only one talking. So.
I think I need a definition of mercy seat.
Mercy seat, that is where God said He would meet His people and talk to them. And once a year, we'll find out later on, once a year the high priest goes in and sprinkles blood on that place to forgive the sins of the entire nation.
A lot of these pictures don't have anything in the middle.
Nothing was said to be there. It says He would just put the two cherubim, both ends, their wings going over, and underneath the wings would be the mercy seat. But there is no chair there.
I was
They were
thinking,
not told to put a chair, you
I
know.
was thinking like a John Deere tractor or something.
What's interesting, though, I've never thought about this, is the connection that your association you're making between the cherubim and the garden. In both cases, there's something pertaining to the deliverance and restoration of man, that they are providing some kind of blockage for a time until the appropriate time is for the full access.
Mhm.
Which I would think during the Old Testament time, certainly that mercy seat would have been made available through the atoning work of Christ.
Mhm.
And they would have provided the appropriate distance until the time was right. The same with the tree of life one day,
Mhm.
which we know we will have access, that cherubim is going to allow access.
Right.
Okay.
And it's interesting because do any of you remember what the function of the cherubim are in Ezekiel's vision? You know, I'm stretching memory. I haven't taught Ezekiel for a couple of years, but they're on the four corners of the platform on which sits the throne of God, and they move the throne of God in any direction.
How many were there though? I was trying to think.
There were four, one on each corner of this platform in which contained the throne of God. And that's the cherubim described with the 6 wings, the 4 faces, you know, but they're called cherubim.
And where were the seraphim placed in that vision, proportion of the cherubim? I forgot.
I don't remember, right? The cherubim were the ones that held it though on the 4 corners.
Right.
So the cherubim have always held up God in some way or been above his mercy seat or...
So in verse 17 here, it says, make a mercy seat. And it gives it the dimensions and everything. So apparently they knew what a mercy seat would have looked like.
Yeah, but we don't. We have no idea.
Don't see
And nobody's ever put one on any arc picture ever drawn.
It's interesting.
It's also interesting because we always see the cherubim on top. Now it says to put them on each side. If you notice in it.
It says at one end.
Now they have to be of one piece with the lid of gold. So they've got to be attached to that lid somehow. But here's an artist who decided, well, you could do it this way too. And they're on the ends with their wing covering over. There's some interesting ones. There's ones where they're, you know, doing all kinds of things. You know, it's just a fascinating thing to look at. We don't have all the answers to it. There are even those who have taught, you know, Lucifer was the cherubim that covered the throne in heaven. And that, you know, the praise was always going through him to God, and that's where his pride rose up and he decided he was as good as God, because there was no other creature as high and beautiful and as powerful as he was, except for God. And his pride overtook him, and that's when he fell. We don't know all that. Again, there's a lot of just making stories up. Conjecture in there. You got a few verses here or there that you have to draw from, but so anyway, this box, needless to say, is a very important box, as we're going to see now. What is the testimony? It says it's going to put the testimony that he's going to give them. What is that?
10 Commandments.
That'll be the tablets of stone that contain the 10 Commandments. That will go in there. Anything else going to go in that box?
Some manna.
The jar.
Staff. Manna.
Well, not
Not
No, 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 no.
Right now, he just says his testimony. That's all he says.
Testimony is the only thing that ever goes into the ark. The pot of manna and the rod that budded were to be set before the ark. They couldn't open the ark once the tablets were placed in there and it was closed. They can't even touch the ark, much less open it. What happened to the guy
So where was
that...
it?
Yeah.
Where were
happened to
the
those Nazis?
other?
They were just sat before it. So they were just out in front of the ark, would be sitting there, and they would be, the pot would be
So they just
there.
carry it with,
Carry it
oh,
separate.
I always thought it was inside.
Never says inside once in Scripture. It says before the ark. Because if you, again, what happened to the guy who touched it when David was moving it? So what do you think would happen if you peeked inside? Well, if you saw Raiders of the Lost Ark, your face would melt and your eyes would pop
That's
out.
right.
So, which Jerry thought I should show that clip tonight. And I thought, I don't think so. I'm not into eyes popping out. So.
Like wax.
So, It was waxed. That's why.
Well,
It was interesting that the manna didn't dissolve.
No, it never went bad.
Never went bad.
Of course, if you're sitting in God's presence, you're never going to go bad. So that's another
Okay.
little lesson
Thank you.
of life. Stay in God's presence because that's where life is. Things don't rot there.
Satan did.
Well, I don't know what happened to him. That's just he's going to be an anomaly forever to figure out how did he give all that up, and
And
why.
a third of the evening.
And, okay, well, let's go on. Look at the next piece of furniture. Like I said, we're going to worry about where these go and everything next week, hopefully. Verse 23, and you shall make a table of acacia wood. 2 cubits shall be its length, a cubit its width, and a cubit and a half its height. And you shall overlay it with pure gold and make a molding of gold around it. You shall make for it a frame of a handbreadth all around, and you shall make make a gold molding for the frame all around. And you shall make it 4 rings of gold, and put the rings in the 4 corners that are at its 4 legs. The rings shall be close to the frame as holders for the poles to bear the table. And you shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold, that the table may be carried with them. You shall make dishes, its pans, its pitchers, and its bowls for pouring. You shall make them of pure gold, and you shall set the showbread on the table before me always. Okay, so now we have a table being made, and it's being made out of the same thing, acacia wood and overlaid with gold. You got the rings, the poles, the same way to carry it. It's interesting, it does not say the poles can't come out on this one. It just says make them, that's how you're going to carry it. We don't know if they left them in or took them out, we don't know. But the moving of it is the same way they move the ark. Now, the size of this table is about 3 feet long. That's all it is. And it's only 1.5 feet wide. And it stands about 2¼ feet off the ground. It is a very little table. Yeah, it's a coffee table. That's what it is. Except it's a bread table.
Not to weigh a ton, but loaded with gold.
Again, it's overlaid with gold. It's the wood that's the weight. It just has gold on the outside of it. It's not solid gold. This is the light. We're going to get to the heavy one next. Again, they all had the ability for 4 people to carry. So, no matter, I think probably the big weight on the ark was the lid, and then 2 stone tablets inside of it that were all the weight to that.
Overlay with gold doesn't necessarily mean it's really, it's like.
Doesn't mean it doesn't have to be
kinda like a
thin. It can be a thin layer,
Yeah.
Now they had plenty of gold, so they made sure it was covered. That there's nowhere you can see through it to the wood.
Yeah, the cherub itself, was it carved out of some kind of,
It was hammered gold, hammered out of one piece of gold as with the lid. The lid was to be gold, was
So that would be.
hammered.
it could be part of the heaviest, the cherub.
Yeah, the lid was, I said, the lid and the stone tablets inside are the real weight of the ark. Now this one, again, there are lots of versions of what it looks like. We really don't know. Those are supposed to be round bread. They were to have a loaf of bread for 1 for each tribe of Israel. Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later when we put it up into the thing. But people have, designed it in different ways. This is what some think it looked like. It does say to connect the poles to the legs, the rings. So they are down lower. Here's another version with the flatbread laid out on it. It would have been flatbread. There's some pictures you can see where it looks like loaves of bread from we have today, and those are definitely not it. So, but there were always 12 loaves of bread to be on that table at all times. And every week they were to be refreshed. And we'll talk about that when we actually set up the tabernacle. All right. Any questions, observations on this table?
On the ark, even though there were just 2 poles, you could have more than 4 men if they were long enough. You could have 8.
If they were long enough. How long are the poles?
Exactly.
Doesn't tell us. So, we have no idea.
I would think the ark would have to be carried on your shoulder, on the shoulders, I mean, because of the weight of the lid itself.
Well, it's gonna have more weight than that when they actually move it. We're gonna see that the ark was never exposed to the outside world. The way the tent is designed, the inside part folds down over it so that the poles stick out and you've got, it's just all wrapped up. So it was never to be seen because only the high priest was allowed to see it once a year.
What about when they put it on a cart, right?
Well, then they finally made it their good luck charm for going into battle, and then it, you know, they kind of blew that, and it didn't work very well either.
Set in the little temple of Dagon for a while. didn't it?
Yeah, well, Dagon had to pay the price for that one. So,
Yeah.
he fell down 3 times on his face.
Yeah, he gave him a hand though.
Get that?
But he lost his head
That's so
over it.
bad.
And he lost his head.
Lost his
Yeah,
head.
lost his head over it, so. I want to know what a tumor looks, no, I don't want to know what a tumor looks like, a gold tumor especially. So, ask my son that question. Anyway, let's go on to the next piece of furniture, the gold lampstand. In verse 31, it says, "And you shall also make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be of hammered work. Its shaft, its branches, its bowls, its ornamental knobs and flowers shall be of one piece." Now think about that. This is going to be one piece of gold that they're going to work on here. And 6 branches shall come out of its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side, and 3 branches of the lampstand out of the other side. 3 bowls shall be made like almond blossoms on one branch with an ornamental knob and a flower, and 3 bowls made like almond blossoms on the other branch with an ornamental knob and a flower. And so for the 6 branches that come out of the lampstand. On the lampstand itself, 4 bowls shall be made like almond blossoms, each with its ornamental knob and flower. And there shall be a knob under the first 2 branches of the same, a knob under the second 2 branches of the same, and a knob under the third 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches that extend from the lampstand. Their knobs and their branches shall be of one piece. All of it shall be one hammered piece of pure gold. You shall make 7 lamps for it, and they shall arrange its lamps so that they give light in front of it. And its wick trimmers and their trays shall be of pure gold. It shall be made of a talent of pure gold in all these utensils. And see to it that you make them according to the pattern which was shown you on the mountain. Now this is a very detailed description of what this is to look like, and I could not believe that there are no 2 artists who did the same thing. You know, they all saw it differently. Everyone.
Now, one thing that's a possible giveaway on this one is on, was it Titus's Arch in Rome?
Mm-hmm.
Somebody did a picture of something they hauled off from the temple.
Yeah.
Whether they guessed or not, who knows?
Well,
They may
it's
have
actually
figured
thought that this was carried off, I think this was carried off from Zerubbabel. I think it's listed in the things that went to Babylon.
Yeah.
So that's where we know where this went. It went to Babylon. Now, it was 75 pounds of pure gold. One piece. So, I looked up at today's rate of gold. And if we could find this thing, that is today worth just a little bit over $1.4 million today. 75 pounds of gold. Now, next week it'll be less.
And for its spiritual advantage, you could probably round it up to 1.5.
Nah, it's closer to 1.4. It was just barely over 1.4, so 1.41.
I just thought you might find the Sanhedrin, they might up it up just slightly
They
for
would.
that. Yeah.
Especially if they were selling it. So,
Do you think that somewhere in Israel, the group that's getting things together for have those things already prepared?
they may. I don't know. Who knows? There's another version of it. Another version. Again, we don't know because we don't use these kinds of lampstands today. And there's a part of it that we don't. Now this one I put up so that you can see the top of it. You think lampstands, we think of candlesticks, things like that. That's what we use. That's not what they use. Remember it says it had to be bowls at the top? And this was the closest thing I could find to the bowls at the top. Because what you did is you laid a wick in there, and then you poured the oil in it, and you burned the wick, you light the wick. And then what the priest did twice a day was go in and trim the wicks, because when they get burned too much on the end, they don't burn well. So trim the wick, and then put more oil in it. And,
How long were the wigs?
well, they're long enough to go into, they just had to go down into the
All the
oil,
way down
just as
into-
long as they're in the oil, and then when they got too short, you replace the wick with a new one. This is where that term wick comes from. You know, it sucks the oil up through it and burns, causes it to burn. So that's, you know, the seven, you know, the seven of them were, you know, the whole light that existed inside the tabernacle. Again, we will deal with that when we get to it. Now
Does
versus,
the oil go all the way down?
no, it's just the bowl on
Just
top.
in the bowl.
Just the bowl on top. That's why twice a day, the priest had to go in and fill the oil up so it continually burned. It was not to go out. So, now the tabernacle, verses 26, 1 to 37. We're going to skip over all this right now. If you so choose this week, I want you to read this passage at home and draw out the tabernacle.
You mean make a picture of
Take
it?
a picture of it. This is the description of the tabernacle itself, the tent part. We'll do it next week. So, okay, does that all make sense? Got that? Okay, I'm going to jump ahead to Exodus 27, where is the making of the altar of burnt offering. And here he says, "You shall make an altar of acacia wood, 5 cubits long, 5 cubits wide. The altar shall be square, and its height shall be 3 cubits. You shall make its horns on its 4 corners. Its horn shall be of one piece with it, and you shall overlay it with bronze. Also, you shall make its pans to receive its ashes, and its shovels, and its basins, and its forks, and its fire pans. You shall make all its utensils of bronze. You shall make a grate for it, a network of bronze, and on the network you shall make 4 bronze rings on its 4 corners. You shall put it under the rim of the altar beneath, that the network may be midway up the altar. And you shall make poles for the altar, poles of acacia wood, and overlay them with bronze. The poles shall be put in the rings, and the poles shall be on the 2 sides of the altar to bear it. You shall make it hollow with boards, as it is was shown you on the mountain, so shall you make it." Okay. Now you're making a square altar. This one's a little bit bigger. It is 4.5 feet tall. This one's got a little bit of height to it. But long and wide, 7.5 feet. Get up there. So anyway, it's a good distance with square. It's a big square. Now there's a reason for that. There's times you're throwing a whole cow on there to cook. So, and multiple sacrifices. So it had to be a good size. Now you have multiple versions of what this looked like. Now the difference here is this has got what overlaid on the wood?
Bronze.
This is bronze. You no longer have gold. That's all symbolic and something we'll talk about again when we place this furniture. Now, you know, there's different ways, again, how people think this is. It's another way. There's one with the altar burning on it. This one. I think this one is probably one of the closer ones, except it's in gold. There's the downside. It's supposed to be bronze. Because you have a grate that's down inside. The wood would be under there. They would put the sacrifice on there, and they would put that over the top. You know, it's a barbecue. Except you burn it till it's gone. So
Really barbecue.
the way I cook sometimes.
That's why we cook burgers like that.
You know, sometimes you did it all, sometimes you didn't cook it all. You know, so it just varied depending on the sacrifice.
Is this the same altar that Adonijah grabbed the horns?
Well, not the one they made for Moses, probably not. It's the one that ended up in the temples where they rebuilt. You're going to see, we'll talk a little bit about this, and when you get to Solomon's temple, he kind of rebuilt all the furniture, at least the external furniture, not the ones inside the holy place, but everything outside he rebuilt in grand scale, very much bigger. That was Solomon's way of thinking he was helping God. And then by the time you get to Herod's temple, it's all redone again. It's all new. So that period in between there, what he would have gone and grabbed would have been the one that Solomon would have made.
Well, yeah,
Now, actually, the-
Solomon wasn't actually king yet when that happened. He just found out that he was, so I don't know that he.
Huh? Could have been. I don't know. But, now all of them have these horns on the edge. Again, we don't even know what those horns look like, or they are obviously well known at the time because they're just like it's a standard. Put the 4 horns on the corners. It's. And again, once we talk about this furniture in the place, because some of this stuff is holy furniture, some that's not as holy, some you could approach, some you
It's
could
got a
not.
lot of holes in it. It's very holy.
Except for the ashes that drop out the bottom.
It's pretty great.
That's pretty great.
Glory, we're great now. We're gonna go down to this one in a hurry. Okay, now you're gonna skip a couple chapters ahead to Exodus 30. We're gonna skip over
We're not just screening comments.
to get to the other piece of furniture, which is the altar of incense. It says in 30, you shall make an altar to burn incense on, and you shall make it of acacia wood. A cubit shall be its length, and a cubit its width, and it shall be square, and 2 cubits shall be its height. The horns shall be of 1 piece with it. And you shall overlay its top, its sides all around, and its horns with pure gold. And you shall make for it a molding of gold all around. 2 gold rings you shall make for it, under the molding on both its sides. You shall place them on its 2 sides, and they will be holders for the poles with which you bear it. You shall make the poles of acacia wood and overlay them with gold. And you shall put it before the veil that is before the ark of the testimony, before the mercy seat that is over the testimony, where I will meet with you. Aaron shall burn on it sweet incense every morning when he tends the lamps. He shall burn incense on it. And when Aaron lights the lamps at twilight, he shall burn incense on it, a perpetual incense before the Lord throughout your generations. You shall not offer strange incense on it, or a burnt offering, or a grain offering, nor shall you pour a drink offering on it. And Aaron shall make atonement upon its horns once a year with the blood of the sin offering of atonement. Once a year he shall make atonement upon it throughout your generations. It is most holy to the Lord. Okay. Now this is a small little altar, again, made completely out of gold. For the size, it is 1.5 feet wide and deep. And it only stands, 3 feet off the ground. So this is a very small altar. Only for incense. As you can see, it is very clear. Don't ever put anything else on this altar except incense. Except for what? There's one thing it is.
Blood for the atonement.
Once a year, Aaron is to apply blood to the horns for the part of the atonement process. I don't make it look like that. I'll go for this one.
From what I read there, it said it only had 2 rings. Did
No,
it?
it had, no, 2 on each
Did it
side.
say
So
2
you
on
have
each
to have
side?
the poles to carry it. Same poles. And here it doesn't matter which way the poles go because it was square, so. We have no dispute over the poles.
2 on each side.
What's strange incense?
Not approved by God. God gives very specific ingredients to the incense that's to be burned on it. And if you burn anything else, you have violated the law.
Does
So-
it give the ingredients?
Yep.
Oh, okay.
We don't know what all the ingredients necessarily are, but he does give a list of ingredients that go into it.
Portions.
Yeah, we don't know the portions, that's what we don't have. They don't give you a list of all the stuff, we might know what it is, but they don't tell you whether it's 2 tablespoons of this, or
2 parts.
a pound of this, or, you know. So we will never know exactly what it's like. Now here's kind of a view from above on it. It's got some shovels and stuff to pour the incense on, and that fire would be in there. Because you will also hear things like strange fire. They're not allowed to use strange fire, and that is because the initial igniting of this will be done, all the fire that starts this thing off, God sends from heaven. And they are never to let that fire ever go out. They would carry the coals lit forever. That's why you have the one case where Aaron's sons go in and offer a sacrifice with strange fire. They lit their own fire. And God said, okay, let me show you what the real fire does. They both burned up. So God sent the fire that was to be used. So, and I like this one too because you got the red on the end of the horns. You realize they never clean it off. So every year that red, blood's added, it's just going to always be on there. It's going to be a lot darker red than that, probably, by this point. But every year they add it to it. And then we have one more piece of furniture. Verse 17, and then the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, you shall make a laver of bronze, and its base also of bronze, for washing. You shall put it between the tabernacle of meeting and the altar, and you shall put water in it. For Aaron and his sons shall wash their hands and their feet in water from it. When they go into the tabernacle of meeting, or when they come near the altar to minister, to burn an offering made by fire to the Lord, they shall wash with water, lest they die. So they shall wash their hands and their feet, lest they die. And it shall be a statute forever to them, to him and his descendants through their generations. Okay, this is a big washing bowl made out of bronze. Now this is one that Solomon goes crazy on. He does and has on the backs of 12 bulls. This huge, gigantic thing, 3 facing each direction, and he just really built this one up to
It's
big.
swimming pool there, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was almost a swimming pool with him. But again, now there's a lot of different. What did it look like? We don't know. Outside of made of bronze, it held water. We know that. It is thought that it was virtually that bronze was nearly mirrored on it, that it was probably finely polished, so that when you looked in, you saw a reflection of yourself. And that would have some significance, which we'll talk about later, to our lives. Again, here's one that did a fancy stand. But now some of these I thought were really interesting. You'll notice this one has 2. It's an upper and lower bowl because they said to wash their feet too. So maybe they did one this way.
Doesn't have poles.
No, this one doesn't have poles either. You can just pick this up and carry it. It's just a dish full of water. It's just kitchen sink.
That's inside, right, of the tabernacle?
No,
Outside for them
it's
to go
between
in.
the altar and the tabernacle. It's in the courtyard, and we will do that next week. This is where it would have sat outside the tent. Something about there. I thought it was interesting they piled all these rocks around to keep it from falling over. I think they would have probably put a little bigger base on it so it wouldn't fall over. They were so particular about the rest of it.
Well, if they had the bottom where you wash the feet, that would hold it, keep it from,
Okay. Well, here's one, and this is the one I like, is this top picture up here.
yeah.
Kind of shows how it could work. Could have plugs in the upper one, they pull out to wash their feet. Don't know. Again, it doesn't say couldn't have to. It just says to make a bowl, a laver. And sometimes, again, you have to understand, in the ancient world, they knew what it meant when they said make a laver. Everybody knew what that was. We look back and go, what in the world was that? We don't know. So it could have had that.
It sounds like 2 bowls, to me, from the way, if you read it.
Does it?
You shall make a laver of bronze, with its base also of bronze, for washing.
Yeah, but what is the base? Does the base go the other way? To
But it
stabilize it?
I mean, but I think that is right with the feet, for the feet.
As you can see, nobody agrees. So, and it doesn't make all that much difference, The key is it's for washing. I would have thought the same thing. I would have probably gone with the double bowl here until the last time I went to Kenya. And we were, when John Hulworth and I went, and we were waiting in the airport in Nairobi for a flight out. And there was a bunch of Muslims that were on this pilgrimage somewhere. And they were all dressed in white. And I went into the restroom, and they're all in there washing their feet in the sink. You know? Okay, whatever. I'm glad I'm not a Muslim. It's too much work. So I don't think I'd get my leg up there. So, and because they had to wash their feet ceremoniously, you know. And I said, oh man, I'm glad I'm free from all that. Why would anybody want to go back to the laws? You know, it's just.
But there's a pride that goes with having a law.
Yeah, there it is.
No matter what religion.
Yeah, I keep the law. And, I couldn't keep it. So, I can take showers, don't worry. So anyway, what are the pieces of furniture that we've mentioned tonight? These are all the furniture that's in there. What is there?
Lampstand?
What?
Lampstand?
Got a lampstand,
The ark,
the ark,
Ark of the Covenant.
incense,
the bread table,
showbread table,
the,
the laver,
Was that how they
the
say
lamp.
it?
Did you say the lampstand?
Yeah, the
lampstands.
altar.
The altar is like.
Don't ever forget the altar. Gotta have the bronze altar to start the whole process. Without that, the rest don't function. Place for the sacrifice. Now it's interesting because when you go ahead and you read this part on the tabernacle itself, the tent, it's going to constantly talk about it being finely woven, finely twisted, you know, things into it. You're going to see again, cherubim are woven right into some of the curtains, you know, so these cherubim are important figures. And in Solomon's temple, he builds them so that they were like, 8 feet, 10 feet tall. You know, Solomon did everything big. Except his palace was twice the size of God's temple, which was always an interesting thing I thought with Solomon too. We will look at what we're going to do next week when we set up I'm going to show you size comparisons between the temples, between the tabernacle, and we'll use something that everyone's probably pretty well familiar with, which is an American football field for size, 100 by 50. Any questions on any of that? Any of those things? Which ones were not gold?
The bronze
Altar.
The bronze altar. Because there's also a golden altar of incense. Levy. Depends where you come from.
Oh, you little French.
And then you have the other ones are gold. These, the two that are not, are always outside and also set right on the ground. You'll also see when you pay attention to which parts are bronze and which part are gold in the tent itself. I mean, the nicer things. You probably never paid attention to that, but there's a consistent theme to all of it. So pay attention when you read through that. It is fun to try to draw it out. Don't look at the picture in your Bible. Don't cheat. Just do the description, And of course, if you don't have anything that tells you what a cubit is and all that, just take the length that says this many, and that size that many, and this size this many, and just turn that into inches. And do it. It's fun to see. I like to always do this when I teach this and see how many different shapes we come up with. Because we all read it differently. And yet God said, build this exactly as I told you, which will also tell you they paid much better attention to detail.
Well, then he said, as I showed you on the mountain.
He showed you on the mountain. He showed Moses on the mountain. And Moses came down and told everyone else how to do it, and they did it right. So, well, God wrote it down.
Look at the difference in the sizes of all the different ones up there.
Yeah.
All,
So do you
they
think?
weren't close on that one.
Yeah, they're all.
I know, I'm sorry.
I see that, Ann.
So it was written down, it wasn't in memory?
I have problems with memory. You gotta remember this, you're dealing with an oral culture. Oral cultures have no trouble remembering stories. We are not an oral culture, we are a written culture. We write everything down. We read it in books, we now read it in computers, tablets, and we've got people who can't read books even anymore. But we're not used to that. Where in an oral culture, the story could not change. And it didn't for generations and generations, and that's why when even people say there's no way, the translation of the Bible could have stayed the same. Yes, it could. You don't understand. It was important to people that they translated and did things the right way, that it stayed the same. There was no. If there are changes, it's usually because somebody intentionally isn't changing, is trying to change something along the way for their own purposes. And that's the danger you have to look at.
And there's really a limited number of generations. We tend to think about time being like so long. But weren't there 14 generations from Jesus back to, was it David?
To David.
To David, okay.
14 from David to Noah or whatever it is.
Right. So I mean, it's a finite number of people who were part of the process. It's not a 1,000 people.
And also you have to understand that in this you will see that God set aside certain people with gifts to do it. So when Moses told them this is what you got to do, they knew what to do. Because God had already sent them as, these guys are gifted in this work. Right. It would be like if I really wanted to do an ark right, I would go to Ron and say, Ron, do it. Because he can do it right. He's gifted in it.
But Moses also was growing up in a culture where they were constantly monuments and building and all of that. As a child, I'm sure he learned things
Egypt,
out of mind.
Look at Egypt, what they did. I mean, they were engineering geniuses in Egypt. And that's where Moses spent the first 40 years of his life.
Just to comment on your beginning about the cherubim and thing. I was sort of glancing through here, and there's a million references in the Bible, and it's all said exactly the same way. God's throne sits between the cherubim.
Yeah.
And it's exactly the same no matter who the people through history. And I get the impression that they really believed God was just sitting there in the temple, basically perpetually, which would be a sense of pride versus the people around you, and that God chooses to take residence on this piece of real estate in our country versus everything else. And it makes me wonder, in fact, because these cherubim seem like what are called liminal gods or goddesses in mythology, where they were controlling a portal between the heavenlies and earth. If in fact these, just like with the tree of life, they were forming a barrier with their wings and with the smoke. Because there's always, when God appears, there's always smoke and clouds, and there's a foggy thing to see through. That actually there was almost like a porthole, a dimension of a porthole that was either original or created at that place of the temple itself. That he was in the heavenlies, and he also was there.
Well, and it was Solomon who said, who can build a house that can contain you? He knows that he knew that's not where God really is. He's there, but he's also everywhere else. He's not just there. He can't be contained in a house. He's too big, too great.
Pastor Bill, do you see any symbolism on this laver when it comes to Jesus?
But we're going to get into that. We're going to get
into. I'm jumping in.
When we put it into when we start putting it in, you're going to see how all of these pieces of furniture have to do with Jesus. Every single one of them.
Because right away I'm thinking about his, unless I wash your feet, you'll have no part of
There's
it.
that, and there's another one on the washing of the water of the Word. And there's very strong symbolism here to our beliefs. So, and the process that they had to go through. You have to often know the process the priests had to go through. And what amazes me with what you're saying there, with this whole thing of, the smoky, the thing, and all that, to realize that the position God has placed us in now is that we are joint heirs with His own Son. There will be no smoke when we're there. There will be nothing but Him. All that is removed. All the veils are gone. Like you said, it says in Corinthians, now we see through a glass darkly. But one day when we see Him face to face, we will be like Him. It will be so transforming that there's no more mystery. There's no more smoke. And And he's chosen that for us. Not the angels, not all these other beautiful creatures. They're below us at that point, which is just amazing. And yet it's nothing we did. Absolutely nothing we did. All him. And it should make us far more appreciative of who he is, what he's done. And so,
Actually, this process began with Jesus, his first advent.
mhm.
When he was here, that process of touching, feeling God was present. I mean, not only was there not this barrier of the Holy of Holies, but little kids ran and jumped in his lap. You had lepers touching, you had prostitutes, tax collectors touching, little kids. There was no such barrier there anymore, so we already see a picture of complete and total unfettered access.
And now we can go into the throne of grace anytime we want. Even now. We don't even have to wait to get there. Anytime we have full access into his presence. Anytime. Just call on his name. Father, we just thank you, Lord. We thank you for that privilege that you've given us to call upon your name. You've invited us to use your name. Lord, we're just so grateful that it's nothing we did. It's all about who you are and what you did for us. And Lord, you gave it to us as a free gift. And Lord, we just ask that you would help us to relay that message of that free gift to other people, Lord. That they can celebrate with us in knowing your presence, walking in your presence. And Lord, I just pray for anyone tonight that has any issues in their lives or things that are going on that need to be changed, or they're calling upon your name. Lord, I know many of us have family issues and other things going on. And Lord, we just are grateful we can call upon you. And no matter how difficult things may be here on earth, you are always a good God. And we can rely upon your goodness. We can rely upon your strength. And we can rely upon the joy that you give us that becomes our strength. And Lord, we thank you and we praise you. And we just ask you to go with us tonight. Walk before us in Jesus' name. Amen.